My favourite Stuart 5A steam engine, this is part 1. Saturday the 5th of February 2022 was a good day. The engine returns home. This is a Stuart 5A steam engine and I rebuilt this in 2017 using parts that I bought online. And the parts I bought online were not very many. I bought a flywheel, a box bed casting and a set of reversing gear castings from Stuart Models. I machined all of these parts, fitted them to the engine, assembled the engine, and I made a series about doing this in 2017. I fitted a good quality mechanical lubricator and this thing, which is an oil pump, to lubricate the crosshead. It's a tank that you fill with oil, and as you move the lever on the small pump, it pumps the oil up to the crosshead. This in turn runs down either side and lubricates the crosshead, but it also runs onto the crosshead and then it goes down via a hole through the hollow connecting rod down to the big end. It's quite well thought out. And it lubricates the small end at the same time. It's quite a good innovation. This clip shows me fitting a piece of silicone rubber tube to the steam inlet. The cable tie presses the silicone rubber against the threads on the steam inlet, and this holds it firmly in place, so I can now turn on the compressed air supply. I hope it still runs as well as it used to. And yes, it runs just as well as it did when I owned it before. What's the story with this engine? I built it in 2017, kept it for a while, and then I rebuilt a small steam toy for a customer. And when he came up to pick up the small steam toy that I rebuilt, he saw this on my dining room table and asked me if I would like to sell it. And to be honest, I didn't want to sell it. But as my old iMac, which I used to use for video editing, was on its last legs and I needed a new one, I put a high price on it. All I can say is the engine went with him back down to Birmingham and I bought a new iMac. A short while ago I received a phone call from the customer and he said he was going to emigrate to South Africa and wanted to sell the engine and asked if I could place an ad on the engines for sale section of my main Steam website. This I did and he got a response from the advert, quite a lot of scams though, saying I will pay you more than you want for it but you must send the engine to me to look at it first. I mean, can you imagine anybody falling for that? And as it says in the old poem, the world is full of trickery, and it certainly is. He got some legitimate low bids and quite a good bid. In the end, the customer contacted me and said that at the time I did say to him, if you want to sell it, I will buy it back off you. Did I still want to do that? And I thought about it and said, yes, why not? And here it is once again on my workbench in the workshop. This is a great example of a 5A and it's definitely the best one I've ever had as far as running is concerned. And what I thought was a really nice touch, he also bought me a bottle of Glenmorangie 16-year-old Scotch whisky. And he delivered the engine, what more could a man want? I thought I would do a bit of a recap on the build because it was quite interesting and fairly unique as far as I was concerned. I rebuilt the Stuart 5A steam engine with a few parts that I bought via eBay and Stuart Models. Here are some edited clips from the 31 episodes that I made about it, starting with episode 1. How to rebuild a Stuart Models 5A steam engine, and this is part 1. Cleaning up the old engine parts. In this clip I'm removing the next to useless exhaust manifold. And this is the piston, a bit grimy but nice and oily, which is what I like to see. All the way through doing this I'm expecting the worst. This is an old scrap engine that I bought, and from my experience of working on such old engines, usually there are lots of problems and I end up with the scrap bin quite full. But this is the exception to the rule. Whoever made this in the first place really knew what they were doing. The piston locates on the piston rod on a taper, and believe me, even once the nut was removed, this piston did not part company with this rod easily. This is ordinary sandpaper, it's 120 grit, and it's the sort of stuff that painter and decorators use. And I use this because if the work should grab the sandpaper is going to tear. It's not going to drag me in towards the sharp revolving pieces. And by first using coarse sandpaper to clean it up, and then finishing it off with some wetter dry paper, a lot finer, I get a good enough finish for the job. That's looking a lot better. This is perfectly serviceable. Please be aware that I am not making a high-speed racing engine or a steam turbine or a gas turbine. I'm making a normal reciprocating steam engine, and a low-revving reciprocating steam engine at that. It's time now to take a quick look at the cylinder to see whether the cylinder needs reboring or sleeving. And it doesn't, it's in perfect condition, really good, a finish like glass. Now it's time to put the lower cylinder cover into the lathe and use some sandpaper to clean it up. And here's another example of why I use cheap sandpaper for doing this sort of a job. It's made out of a stiff sort of paper, and the more you fold it, the harder it gets. Like this. It's almost like a multi-toothed lathe tool now. And by doing it this way, I can keep my fingers clear of the rotating piece of work, plus the chuck jaws. I could of course skim this with a lathe tool, but then the part would get much smaller, because it's not bound to be 100% concentric. I gave the top cylinder cover the same treatment. I didn't show it because it's just a repeat procedure of what you've just seen. And this is quite clean now. I have a kit of parts that are quite nicely machined. And the rest of the castings and parts are now on order from Stuart Models. I made that video in 2017 and now it is 2022. And I'm really pleased to have it back. It's going to take pride of place in my collection once it's finished. I will of course steam it from time to time, and I may even fix it up so it powers a generator. Although it wouldn't really be practical to have a steam engine powering a generator, the problem being you have to keep your eye on the water level in the boiler at all times. Plus the best boiler I have is only 6 inches in diameter. It's a Castle Steam V6. And although it will run the engine perfectly, there isn't really enough water capacity, so I'm constantly having to top it up with water because the engine uses a lot of steam. That's enough narration for now. I'm going to continue playing with the engine and I'll be back with another video tomorrow. I'll finish the video with a bit more slow motion. Stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my main Steam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.